Okay, we're going to continue this simple, oops, it's gone, this simple animation intro video, our example, and look at controlling this animation with mouse input and keyboard input. Okay, so let's clean things up a little bit here. You know what, I'm not going to use frame count, so I'm actually just going to get rid of that, but it can come in handy in other examples or other programs. I'm going to change this. Remember, this is the key, right? If something is true, change these variables, control the animation, and let's put this back in here again too, so that we can also have all the animation in one block of code here. And what I'd like to do in here is actually just create a Boolean variable. So this is a Boolean expression, right? It's comparing, is this value greater than this, and that value is true and false. I'd like to do a Boolean variable that will store either true or false. And if we're doing mouse and keyboard input, I would love to have a Boolean variable called mouse is pressed. And if the mouse is pressed, I'll do this, but if it's not pressed, then I won't do this. Now this, of course, won't work. I can't just magically use a variable. It's going to tell me, hey, mouse is pressed is not defined. Right? We have to control that. We have to make it. So I'm going to make that a global variable, let mouse is pressed. And I'm going to initialize it to, well, let's make it true. Okay, so it's going to store the Boolean value true. Just like we can put numbers in and strings in, we can actually store Boolean data types as well. And since mouse is pressed has the value true, this will evaluate to true, which means it'll run the code inside of the if statement, and it will animate. Great. If I made this false, that if statement will evaluate to false, and it'll never run the code inside of it because it's always false. So what I need is, I need a way to be able to change this variable from true to false, from false to true, etc. And if the variable is called mouse is pressed, we should probably control whether it's true or false based on whether the mouse is pressed or not. All right, so down here at the bottom of my program, I'm going to make a section for event stuff. Okay, and we know how to listen for events. We just go document dot. In this case, I'm not going to select an element. I'm just going to add an event directly to the document. I'm going to add an event listener, and I'm going to look for the click event. Right? Oh, actually, we got to be careful here. We've done the click event, but there's also other ones, like mouse down, mouse move, mouse out, mouse up. I want to use mouse down and mouse up. The click event is great. That's when I do a full click, but I want to be able to know, hey, was the mouse pressed down? And I need to know when it was released. Right? So mouse down. And I'm just going to call a function called mouse down handler. Okay, it's just going to, a function, oops, I don't need that, a function that's going to control what happens when the mouse gets pressed down. All right, function mouse down handler, right there, like so. And really, this code will execute whenever the mouse is pressed down. So I'd like to say mouse is pressed is true. All right. I'm going to do a little copy and paste and change this to mouse up and mouse up. And now I'll have a function called mouse up. Actually, you know what? Let's continue with our copy and paste. Copy and paste. Let's change this to mouse up handler. And when the mouse is up, right, like I release the button, then I want to set it to false. So the mouse's press is controlling whether the animation happens, and when I press the button down, it'll become true. When I release it, it'll become false. All right, and what does it start in at? It starts out as false. Good. So it starts off as false. When I click, oh, sorry, when I clicked, I have to hold it down. When I hold it down, it'll animate. When I release, hold it down, release. Hold it down, release. Cool. Hold it down, release. All right, so that's essentially, we've now got this beautiful mouse is pressed variable. The event listeners will toggle whether it's true or false, right? When I press it down, true. When I release, false. That's kind of cool. You know, when I first started doing this, I think you could tell, like I was expecting to just click and it should animate, and I click again to stop it. That's actually something we'll look at right now. Right now I have to hold the mouse down and it'll stop when I release. but wouldn't it be cool if I could just click and it'll animate, click and it'll stop? All right, so to do that, what we need now is we actually don't need the mouse up. I could do either just mouse down, or I think I'm going to change it to click now. I just want to have the one when I click the mouse. What am I going to do? And I'll call this the mouse click handler. Mouse click handler. Okay. I still want to use. I can still use this mouse is pressed variable. You know what? No, I don't like that. Because this mouse is pressed kind of meant what I was originally doing when I hold it down. Let's just change this to an animate variable. Animate is false, and in here I'm going to change this to animate. Just makes more sense. Do I want to animate or do I not want to animate? And what I can do now is in my click handler, I can switch the value of this animate variable. I can say, hey, if animate is true, I like to assign animate to be false again, else animate should be true. Right? So it's just basically saying, hey, if animate is true already, make it false, otherwise it must be false, so I'm going to change it to true. So whenever I click, I switch it or toggle it. So now I click it once, I'm not holding it down, it just keeps running. I click again, it stops. Click, 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 click. Beautiful. Okay. Now this works, but I'm going to suggest there's a more efficient way to do this. Basically what I'm doing is just toggling the value. I can actually do this in one line of code. I can simply say animate is assigned exclamation mark animate. This is a logical operator called the not operator, right? We've actually probably seen it before in, not equal to. But the not operator basically does the opposite. So if animate is true, not true will become false. If animate is false, not false will become true. So it just switches it from what it currently is. True becomes false, false becomes true. And in that one line of code, I should now be able to do the same thing. Okay, cool. All right, that's the basics for mouse. We now know how to do, when I hold the mouse down, I can control the animation. And when I click, I can turn it on, and click to turn it off again. All right. Same principles apply for keys, right? Let's change this to, key down, I think is the common one we used. And I'll change this to key down handler and change this to key down handler. And now when I click, nothing happens, but when I press a key, and I can do any key here, right? Press a key, it'll start, press the key again, and it'll stop. Okay. And again, if I wanted to control this with a special key, I could say, hey, if, I think in the past I've used event.keycode, but I think modern JavaScript is trying to get away from that and just using event.code. Let me just check this out. So in my console, if I press a key, it gives me the word space. K is key K, left arrow is arrow left, right arrow, up arrow, or arrow up. So I can use these words to check. So let's check space. So I could do, hey, if event.code, and that's, I'm surprised that worked actually. Usually I need to have event here. Anyway, maybe it magically worked. Okay, if event.code, I love it when things work when you don't expect them to. All right, I'm going to cut this out and put that in here. If event.code is equal to the word space, the string space. Okay, so now, right, I press G, nothing happens. I press up, left, nothing happens, but space. Great, so I can just trigger it off of one key now, not any key. Oh, I don't know what just happened. Space, space, etc. Okay, and then I guess another thing I could quickly show you in terms of keyboard would be, remember that key is pressed. We could do the same type of thing. So let's just rename this again to, oops, caps lock key is pressed. We could leave it as animate. Like I said, I just like variables to mean to represent what they're kind of intended to do. So, and actually in this case, let's change this to space key is pressed. Space key is pressed. And now I would need to do the key down, which is great. I can now say space key is pressed as assigned true, right? And then I need to add another event listener for key up. So this is just like we did mouse down and mouse up. Key down and key up. And then what I'll do inside, let's actually just copy and paste this. We'll call this the key up handler. Don't need to print out these key codes every time, although it is kind of handy if you want to test certain values. And now I'll change this to false. Right, so basically it says, hey, when I hit a key, I'm going to run this code. If the key that I pressed was the space key, set space key is pressed to true. When I release a key, right, key up, I'll run this code. If I release the space key, then I'll say space key is pressed as false. And now the effect should be, main.js line 41. Oh, hello. Clearly didn't select everything. Document. There we go. Anyway, that's a great example of keep your console open, right? When you're programming, it really helps. Error messages will pop up, and you'll be able to fix them quickly. So now again, I press any key, nothing's happening. But if I press a space key, right, I have to hold it down and release it. Hold it down, release it. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there. Anyway, the key idea is this if statement is controlling the animation, right? And then I can make a Boolean variable that's either true or false, whether that's an animate variable or a space key is pressed or a mouse is pressed. And then I control that variable on events, right? Either I click or key down, key up, mouse down, mouse up. And those events will control these variables to be either true or false. And that allows us to control what happens here. One thing maybe real quickly, I've got a few minutes here, a little bit of time left. One thing that I might show you yet is not only can we use this if statement to control these animations, we could actually take this if statement and put it around drawing the square. Right? I got to get rid of that and put it around here. I'm going to just hit Shift-Alt-F to format. So now this isn't inside of an if statement, so it should run all the time. But now the drawing the actual square won't happen unless now you'll see it's still moving. It should show up here the next time I press it. Right, so that's kind of cool too, right? The if statement can control anything, the drawing or the animation, whatever you want. All right. Okay, let's leave it at that. Next video, I think we'll look at mouse input a little bit more, figuring out how we can tell the mouse location on the screen. And actually, maybe I'll make a simple paint program now, because that's key. If we wanted to do a little paint program, we would need to have that mouse location to know where to draw something. Anyway, I think that'll be next. We'll work on a simple paint program next. And I hope this made sense. If statements to control, Boolean variables, events, good stuff. Take care. See you in the next video.